The city of Changsha in central China is known for a range of things, from stinky tofu to being the entertainment capital of the country. And it draws not just tourists, but also many who want to relocate there from around the country. Well, as China marks the 75th anniversary of the People's Republic this year, CNA's Olivia Siong finds out how its central regions have gone from forgotten child to key players in the next phase of its development.
It's been 3 years since 29-year-old Shi Honghong and her husband made the bold move to leave the first-tier city of Shanghai, where they've lived for close to a decade, choosing to call the city of Changsha in central China's Hunan province home instead.
上海的话是我觉得是大多数人向往的一座繁华的都市。那么虽然说它的一个薪资水平也更高，就是一线城市的房价确实蛮高，买不了房，但是你又面临着要结婚生孩子。比起活在一个城市，我觉得说生活在这个城市是更加重要的。长沙相对上海来说，生活的烟火气非常的浓。 在这边的生活更加张弛有度一些，就是说它也会有加班呀，但是，你相对来说你会有更多的精力去平衡工作和生活。
Changsha has ranked among the top 10 happiest cities in China for 16 straight years, and in the last 3 years has been among cities in the central region that have seen the largest population growth, Changsha taking top spot in 2022. Its other claim to fame is that China's late founding leader, Mao Zedong, got his revolutionary start in Changsha, studying in the city during his formative years. A statue of him as a youth standing in the center of the city, now a popular tourist attraction.
长沙是个红色的革命区啊，所以说伟人也是属于长沙的啊，所以说全国来旅游的人来定居的人也是很多的。 一个城市要发展，必须要有人口啊。
But Changsha didn't always enjoy such a lively reputation.
Well, I can tell you it gets pretty hot here in the day in Changsha, especially in the summer. So you can see at this popular tourist spot, it's not too crowded at the moment. But at night, this place comes alive.
The development of China's central region lagged behind others during the country's reform and opening up era in the 80s and 90s, as resources were focused on the booming coastal cities. That fate changing partly due to favorable government policies under what was dubbed the Rise of Central China Plan in 2004. The city seizing opportunities to develop pillar industries, earning it a new first-tier city status in 2017.
Population are refocusing in those areas, and also there's very strong technological and industrial clustering conditions to support their future development.
Also calling Changsha home is this Chinese electric vehicle giant. Based in Changsha since 2009, BYD put the city on the map and has continued to expand with strong local government support. That BYD has chosen Changsha as its base was not something to be taken for granted. Local authorities pulled out all the stops. In 2019, to ensure BYD set up its new electronics factory, media reported how local officials made multiple site visits to resolve water and electricity issues, and even helped to recruit over 2,000 workers for the company in a month.
Changsha is really, in a sense, a hub for the central region, and especially in the automotive sector, and obviously attracts many, many resources and many companies to the region that may coexist and co-supply its customers. But I think that more important is the fact that when you have a city in a region that is becoming fiercely competitive in a global context, it's very important that the surrounding region also benefit from the success of the city.
With its economy struggling to bounce back from the 3-year COVID malaise, China needs more success stories such as that of Changsha. But with the internal and external headwinds that it's facing, it's also more difficult than before for other cities to replicate the Changsha model. Olivia Siong, CNA, Changsha.
And for more on China's economic trajectory beyond its 75th founding anniversary, we are joined by our correspondent, Olivia Siong, and Milken Institute's Managing Director of Research, Perry Wong. Now, Mr. Wong is also the author of the latest Best Performing Cities China report. Now, just released earlier this month, the index saw Hangzhou, the capital of Zhejiang province, moving up 7 places to be the best performer among first and second tier cities this year. Notably, former COVID epicenter Wuhan takes second spot. 3 other cities in a central region, Changsha, Nanchang, and Hefei, made it to the top 10. The index considers 15 indicators, including growth in jobs, average wages, and the share of foreign-funded industrial enterprises. So let's just kick things off. Our panel first over to you, Mr. Wong. We heard Olivia's story there about China's central region. If we were to take a more macro view, how big is the disparity in development between China's various regions? Help us understand, because I would imagine that this would pose a challenge to the authorities, wouldn't it?
Well, I think if you pick Beijing, for example, its per capita income is about 4.3 times of that of a province in Gansu. So that's a very huge number. Now, that's a dollar sign measurement. But in terms of economic reality, the gap actually most revealing in education, healthcare, and economic opportunities. So it's not a small gap. Certainly about 17 of the 34 city provinces, 17 of them actually are below the mean of per capita income. So there's quite a gap for the middle region to catch up, and also the West as well.
Right, and Mr. Wong, I just want to dive a little bit deeper into the report. We talked about Hangzhou, which is ranked the best performing city, and we also know that it is home to Chinese tech firms like Alibaba. But I guess what kind of surprised me there was Wuhan, being the COVID epicenter some years ago, and it performed really well, which sort of came as a surprise. But what are some of the similarities and differences these two top-ranked cities that place it so high up in the rankings?
The big surprise comes from actually on how strongly it rebounded. 27 positions is not a small feat. It's a huge jump. And I guess that's what I would call is due to the disastrous economic recovery, namely the pandemic. So after that, the city had to recapture its opportunity, rebuild, and all those imply one thing: huge amount of public expenditure, recruitment accompanied, and so on and so forth. So in the last couple of years, the economic fortune turned their way, and hence Wuhan is being propelled to the second position. Now, on top of the pandemic, I think people should not lightly look at Wuhan just another city. Actually, Wuhan is one of the most important logistics center in China, and also is a very diverse industrial space. Almost all kind of machinery, from defense to non-defense related, heavy industry, all presented in the city. So the base is very sound.
Okay. Now, Olivia, I want to bring you in here. Wuhan, we know it's in central China, and you've been traveling around the central region for this story. I mean, China being so vast, and yet you chose to focus on this part of China, and I'm curious to know why.
Well, Ateli, many would be familiar with the bigger Chinese cities that Mr. Wong mentioned there, Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Guangzhou. Those are familiar, but a city like Changsha is not as well known. But if you're here in China, you would have heard of Changsha being called a Wanghong Chengshi, which is an internet famous city. And that really piqued my interest, because if we were to look at it, Changsha does not really have any natural advantages. It's a landlocked city. It's not near the coast or near any ports. But yet it's been able to make its mark today and becoming a very popular, not just tourist destination, but a destination that many people move to. As we saw earlier, they have been able to build strong pillar industries, whether it's in smart manufacturing or in heavy construction machinery. The city also known for many popular local brands like the milk tea brand Changsha, which has focused on having many of its 500 shops mostly within the city itself. And Changsha has also become very popular because of pop culture. It's known as the entertainment capital. Many hugely successful variety and talent shows are filmed there by the provincial media network, which is seen as a pioneer in the industry, but also bringing a lot of revenue into the city. And that, along with the population changes for this story as we look ahead to what lies ahead for the People's Republic of China as it marks its 75th founding anniversary. It was interesting to see, how the central region, which is not typically talked about, can play a role, and it is being counted on to play a role for China's next phase. I'll tell you. Well, actually, I did have a question for Mr. Wong, because as we're talking about, looking at the next phase of China's development, we also know that there is a lot of competition between the cities and provinces. What would you say have been some of the strategies that have been employed by these local governments to attract businesses and people to set up and invest within their localities?
Actually, the city started to come up with different trick, which is different than, say, 15, 20 years ago. Changsha, I think, tried to advertise for easy living, plenty of space. Actually, the first city, big city, to coin this thing as best living or easy to live city is actually from Chengdu. I think back about 8 or 9 years ago, the city government of Chengdu actually advertised on attracting talents and young professionals to the city by saying that once you get your college degree, you don't even need a job, just come live in the city and we'll find a job for you. So it actually created a big wave of new policy, new thinking by not just providing convenience to the business, but also how to attract the young talent to the city, because they figure once you have the young people, company will likely be following those young talents as well.
Now, Olivia,
so that's unique.
Yeah, that's certainly very unique, right? How to attract these young people to these new cities to keep the momentum going. And so, Ollie, I'm wondering, China's facing all these, internal and external headwinds. What then are the key challenges for cities like Changsha to, sort of keep the momentum going?
Well, I'll tell you, there's actually a lot of pressure on the central region to, keep up with economic growth. And because it has seen a slowdown following the COVID-19 pandemic with a loss in investor and business confidence. And its economic growth has actually lagged behind other regions in China. In fact, Chinese President Xi Jinping visited in March earlier this year in Changsha, where he held a symposium saying that there is a need to have solid efforts to further energize the central region, talking about the importance of innovation in science and technology and to cultivate new productive forces, which really has been the buzzword this year as China looks to boost its struggling economy. Hunan, of which Changsha is the provincial capital of, has set an ambitious growth target of 6% for this year, which is higher than China's GDP growth target of around 5%. And there are plans to boost its imports and exports, which is interesting for a landlocked region, which, however, has benefited from improved connectivity and rail lines to Guangdong, where the ports are. There's also greater talk of, cooperation and, selling to new markets that China traditionally may not have relied on, but because of geopolitical headwinds and, for example, tariffs on goods like electric vehicles, is looking at, for example, boosting cooperation with Africa as it looks to meet those challenges and to put China into its next phase and its next frontier. I tell you.
Mr. Wong, bring you in here again. I mean, our big news for today is obviously China unveiling these new stimulus measures. whether it's slashing bank reserve requirements or reducing interest rates, right? So how do you think these initiatives mentioned today will benefit China's central regions, which have already, as it is, demonstrated impressive growth rates of, I believe, 8.6% annually during the 13th five-year plan period?
I think the central region would get most of the benefit if you compare to others in the coastal regions for a couple of good reasons. I think the most one is sounder economic fundamental, meaning they have been on the right base and growing industry with some central government policy in place, which I think will project them to have a higher growth. And second, in terms of the property markets, the city there probably are less burdened by some of the speculative activities and hence will receive less damage. So when the macroeconomics economy get greased up, I think they can propel their growth further. But that said, I think confidence is the issue. I think any of the city's economic growth can be sustained. I think housing market can recover and people certainly will spend. I think it's about job, and jobs.
But how well, Mr. Wong, how well buffered do you think China's economic strategy is when it comes to, because they've been focusing on tech, right, a lot, but they've also had a lot of international scrutiny surrounding its new productive forces, like whether it's in EVs or solar panels. Do you think there's going to be any adjustments in their strategy?
I don't think so, because China alone will need to digest large amount of solar panel and EVs or any of the green technology that we can think of. Because if the country has to meet its own green target by 2050 and 2060s, they probably need a lot more. That said, I think that also would help out to build the central region as well, because many of them actually need those technology. And I think the city can extend their cluster from the core center, say from Shanghai or from Shenzhen, to project the influence into regions like Changsha, or in the case of Hefei, the entire province. I think we'll need all those newly built cluster to create jobs. So it's both internal, external need that the Chinese government would create a buffer for job creation and also dampen the impact of geopolitical effects.
Well, that's been a great discussion on China's new frontiers, and I think you've given me some ideas, some places that I definitely have to visit: Changsha, Wuhan, and Chengdu. So thank you so very much for your time and thoughts, Perry Wong, Milken Institute's Managing Director of Research, and as always, our correspondent, Olivia Siong in Beijing. Thank you.